A big part of my life is I try to let the students know that I'm a human being. I think that's very, very important. And also to share the knowledge that they have. And so one of my favorite Greek proverbs is the importance of making society better than you you have to make society better when you leave. So the importance of my students knowing that when the knowledge that they have to share it with somebody else. So the proverb goes, it's society grows great when old men plant trees in whose shade they will not sit. And so that's what I try to educate my students about, and just making leave this world a better place.
Welcome to the Locala podcast, everybody. I'm Lisa Anderson, your host and publisher of Locala magazine. And today we have Patrick Stanley on the couch. Before we head on over to him, I do want you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button and like this channel and do all the fun things that help us to keep growing here. And so today we're going to head on over and talk some food with Patrick, who is a culinary arts instructor at Forest High School. So welcome, Patrick.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
So let's go ahead and ease you into this whole podcast thing and just talk about what you do at the school and kind of how you got into it.
Well, I'm the culinary instructor at Forest High School, and it's a program. It's a magnet program that has over 300 students. Wow. And it's all 4 levels. I'm lucky enough in my career I get to have a student from when they're freshmen and sophomores and then juniors and then seniors, and I get to watch them grow within those 4 years.
Yeah.
We actually even go to competitions, and just like you see on like a Master Chef or something like that, we do that every year. What we really focus on are getting these students their certifications. Okay. When you go into the service industry, you need certain certifications that they'll do during orientation. Okay. But we go a little bit beyond that with our juniors and seniors. If you're a manager in a restaurant, you have to have a certain certification. Okay. And if the restaurant is open from 10 a.m. to 11, at all times, one person has to have this certification inside that building at all times, at least one person. And we get our students to acquire that certification, and they have that before they even interview for a job.
That's amazing.
My job is to teach students a skill, whether they want to do it for a lifetime, whether they want to be chefs, or whether they want to be general managers for a restaurant, or if they even just want to have a job while they're going through college, to help out family, to pay tuition. It's important they stand out. If you have a group of 5 applicants and then one of these students has a certification and they never set foot in the service industry, then you're most likely going to hire them. Yeah. So that's what we really focus on. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. So how did you get into it then?
I lucked out. I never went to culinary school, which there's a couple of, people think about it in different ways. Culinary school is not for everyone. The majority of chefs that I know, really successful chefs, they've never attended culinary school. Yeah. The reason why they got into it is because their absolute obsession with it. Right. And when you since curiosity is the basis of all knowledge, if you're really curious about something, it deepens your knowledge of that subject. Yeah. And about 8 years ago, I just became absolutely obsessed with it. And I'm not talking about finding a recipe and, just baking bread of a recipe. Fine. Right. I'll find a recipe and then I'll make it, and then I'll see what happens if the water is 2 degrees hotter or 2 degrees cooler. Yeah. And then what type of yeast you use, and it just became this obsession. When I wasn't working, I was doing stuff like this. Yeah. And I became a real nerd about it. And I started off my teaching career up at North Marion Middle School. I was a history teacher for a year. Okay. And then I was working in a restaurant during the summer. And then somebody that worked for the county was in there, and they saw me in the restaurant. They're like, "Have you ever thought about teaching culinary?" And I was like, "No," but now I am. And so it was a long hiring process, and just all the interviews you had to go through and make sure you're the right fit. And I was apparently the right fit. And I've been doing it teaching it for us now for going on 7 years.
Wow. So I take it you probably during 2020 enjoyed the shutdown to be able to experiment with more food?
Oh, no, I did not.
Oh, really?
Because we had to teach a culinary class online.
Oh, okay.
And so we had to get cameras, and it was very difficult. Once I figured out the little nuances of what I had to do, we had a full schedule of 6 classes, of students that were in Zoom meetings. And there's only so much you can do talking about the really boring stuff when it comes to culinary, like sanitation and what's the temperature that the dishwasher needs to be at for sanitation purposes, and what's the parts per million for the sanitizer in the 3-compartment sink. There's only so much you could talk about. So as we were doing it, I was like, you know what, we're just going to cook. So all the kids had cameras. If they didn't have a camera, the school provided one for them, and also a laptop too, which is a really, really good thing.
Yeah.
So we set up our cameras to where I actually had just a bunch of these kids cooking. I put on these silly videos. We had to do an introduction video, and I don't know anything about effects or anything like that. So I'm doing stuff with this video, just the program that they give you on the computer. And so I thought it was boring. And so I found a little thing that put butterflies behind it. And it looked really, really stupid. But, part of being a teacher is how you're successful is you're not afraid to look stupid sometimes.
Right.
And so with these videos, there's a big smiley face on the back of a cereal box. And when I had to do 5 minutes later, I'd put that up to the camera and be like, 5 minutes later. And it's just being silly. And these kids took it really, really seriously, which is just amazing. And when we would do it, I mean, these kids would be at home. So they had normal things going on at home. Like I had this one young lady whose little brother always just kept bothering her. And so, you pick up the kid if he wants to know what's going on. She put him on his lap and then had class with us, It's being understanding and making it fun, especially of that type of atmosphere. Plus, I'm not a person that likes, I can't stay idle for too long.
Right.
So that was a challenge. It was a challenge.
I know a lot of people, it's kind of a good segue when you say you're not really like idle, because I know a lot of people might actually know you from the area just because of your acting that you have done, because you have done a lot of shows at OCT. You did a couple through Insomniac Theater as well. So talk about that part of your life, and are you still doing shows?
I'm still doing shows when I can, but I'm older now, so that is not my main focus. It was my main focus because if I'm not doing something artistic, then it's just, I feel like things are stagnant.
Yeah.
So I've done a lot of stuff with Locala Civic Theater. I was Shrek in Shrek. I was Miss Trunchbull in Matilda. I was Lancelot in Camelot. I was Jerry in The Full Monty, which is one of the greatest learning experiences that an actor could have. I did with Insomniac. I did the last 5 years, which is so vocally challenging. And that just being a 2-person show is a challenge in itself. I've also done some professional work down at the Angel Cabaret Theater down in Tampa, and then up at the Hippodrome as well.
Oh, very cool. So how did you get into theater?
I never thought that I would get into something like that. My senior year, I was big in band.
Okay.
I was a band nerd.
All right.
I loved being a band nerd. If my kids,
I was a choir nerd, so.
No, well, I became a choir nerd my senior year. So one day, there was a group out at Forest High School called Forte, and that was like their show choir.
Okay.
And they were like the really good kids, and we were like, "Whew, you guys can sing." And so I'm packing up my stuff one day, and I'm by myself. I don't know if you're familiar with Forest, but the band room and the choir room were the same one, but they have this hallway.
Okay.
And I was by myself. And I was singing for some reason. I was just singing to myself like a little Sinatra tune or something like that. And then the choir director came out and said, "Hey, we have an issue because you hear me singing." And then he said, "Would you mind filling in for this spot for this young man that got sick?" Oh. And so I was like, I don't know. So I was all scared and nervous, and I said, yeah. And then they put me in choir. And I was only in choir from January my senior year.
Okay.
And then we did competitions and state competitions and stuff like that in March. And that's how I started singing. And then I ended up getting a scholarship to Variations directed by Don Tyler at CF. And so I did that. And then that was a show choir. So it was just like a mishmash, like a bunch of people up there dancing and singing for 2 hours. Just, all right, we'll give you 2 lines of this song, 2 lines of that song. And I did a song in there called Nothing Like a Dame from South Pacific. And I was with my good friend at the time. His name was David Wallace. He's moved up north since now. And we heard that Locala Civic Theater was doing South Pacific. Mm-hmm. And so we all get excited. We're just like, wow, this is going to, let's do South Pacific. That's songs from South Pacific. Let's sing Nothing Like a Dame together. It has a bunch of sailors, and blah, blah, blah. And so we were really excited. And so we went and auditioned. And I've never been to an audition before in my life, and I didn't know what to expect. And then we got our songs ready, and then they read us, and I've never acted before a day in my life. And then all of a sudden they offer me a part, a supporting role, Lieutenant Cable. That's the young Marine.
Yeah.
That was more Marine-esque back in those younger days. But the thing is, my character, all I wanted to do was sing Nothing Like a Dame with Dave.
Okay.
And my character, he had this big old production of Nothing Like a Dame. At the very last note, the button of Nothing Like a Dame, somebody walks in and then interrupts the whole thing and is like, get back to work. And that was me. So I didn't get to do Nothing Like a Dame. So I was very disappointed, because that's all we wanted to do. But that was my start, Lieutenant Cable in South Pacific at OCT, and then just kept doing show after show, as young people have a tendency to do, because you have fun in one show, you want to do the next, you want to do the next, you want to do the next. So when you're younger, you're trying to do every single show possible, and you'll work your schedule around that. But now when you get older and have a career,
it slows down a little bit, doesn't it?
Slows down a lot.
Those evening hours don't seem quite as fun anymore.
We're doing 5 shows in a year. And then now I'm just like, I don't know if I have time to do one. And, but I love it. I'll do it for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I mean, if they allow me to.
Yeah.
Anywhere, anytime, be like, hey, go sing this song in the park. Okay, fine.
Oh, right, that's cool. So if you went to Forest then yourself, are you born in this area? Were you originally from this area?
No, I'm actually from Woodbury, New Jersey. I moved down here very, very young. My family first moved down here to Eureka.
Oh.
Right outside of Fort McCoy.
Okay.
And again, I was very young, so I'm a northerner that's been raised in the South. But we lived in Eureka, my mother and father, and then my grandmother came down with us as well. And then we moved to Silver Springs.
Okay.
And then eventually my father opened up his own flower shop. He was a florist.
Very cool. And you had no desire to be a florist after him?
No. My older brother, Greg, he still does. He lives out in Austin, Texas, and he's a very talented and very artistic when it comes to stuff like that.
Yeah.
I have 2 brothers. Greg, he's artistic when it comes to that type of stuff. Nick, he's very artistic, even though he doesn't like to admit it. But he's a very talented dude, too. And I don't know. He just moved from Austin to North Carolina with his wife, Kim, and they're just living their best life right now.
Oh, that's fantastic. So where do you fall as far as age-wise between your brothers?
I'm the middle one.
You're the trouble child.
Maybe. Well, trouble, I don't know what you mean. One time I shot my brother in the butt with a BB gun that I put a screw in.
Trouble.
So trouble. So I'm the middle child.
Yeah.
Being a middle child, I mean, they've written books on just being a middle child. And, growing up, my older brother would give me his hand-me-down clothes, and I didn't want to wear my brother's clothes. And by the time I got through them, we couldn't hand them down to the younger brother because they were too torn and tattered. Yeah. So Greg got the new stuff, and then Nick got the new stuff, and I always got Greg's hand-me-downs. And, it's being the middle child is rough.
Yeah. So if all of you are artistic, was there, other than your dad being a florist, was there a lot of artistic influence in your family?
Just my dad was a really, really good piano player.
Okay.
And so growing up, we lived in a household that was filled with, musicals like Guys and Dolls and The Music Man and Sinatra. And my dad's big thing was Motown. I just remember the house being filled with, every Motown singer you can possibly think of. The Four Tops, and Diana Ross was his absolute favorite. He loved her so much that he commissioned an artist to paint this painting, and it's a big, glorious painting of Diana Ross.
Oh, wow.
And even on her dress has like puffy paint. And it was done in 1986. And I don't know how that I ended up with it after my father passed away, because he passed away when I was a sophomore in high school.
Okay.
But I still have it, and it still hangs in my hallway to this day.
Oh,
and
wow.
it's such a conversation piece. People are like, that's strange, weird, but awesome at the same time. The musical influence is just constantly listening to mainly Diana Ross.
Yeah.
I mean, every single song I could. Hopefully, I was going to go see her last year, but hopefully I get to see her before she gets 2 months older.
Yes, absolutely. What instrument did you play in band then?
Trombone.
Trombone?
Yeah.
Do you still play?
When I can. I've actually played a couple of times in the Locala Civic Theater Orchestra.
Oh, very cool.
So that's an awesome thing to do.
Yeah.
And hopefully, I've been talking to certain people, but I have to talk to the right people. Maybe if they're watching, I'd like to be a part of the Kingdom of the Sun band, just so I can keep playing, and on a regular basis. I have my trombone. It was actually gifted to me. So when I started playing at the Locala Civic Theater, I couldn't afford my own.
Okay.
And so there was this gentleman. His name's Darryl Riley. He recently passed away, and he called me one day and he goes, "Hey, I hear you're going to play an orchestra." And I was like, yeah. And he called his trombone Betsy. And he's like, "You want to use Betsy?" I was like, "No, I can't do that." I was like, "I'll rent it off you." He was like, No. So he lent it to me to play in the orchestra. I took very good care of it, like it was my child. And so I gave it back to him. Then a year later, I did another orchestra, and he would call me up. He's like, "You want to use Betsy?" Before I even would say anything.
Yeah.
Use it again and again and again, and it just became a thing with us. But recently, he did pass away, and Jenny Riley, who is just a wonderful woman, we were sitting in her house one day, and she gifted it to me, the trombone. So I have not only a trombone that I have, but I have my favorite one.
Oh, that's
and
fantastic.
So it has a lot of history to it.
Yeah, I was going to say, what a great piece. So you got a couple of conversation pieces going for you.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Oh, that's great.
I love it.
So let's drive back into food a little bit. What is your favorite thing to prepare? What's your favorite thing about working with food?
Cooking is artistic in itself. I think art is anything that moves somebody.
Yeah.
When you cook for somebody, you look for three things, and it's something that people have to do on a regular basis, or light doesn't exist.
Right.
And so if they enjoy it, it's something else. So you look for three things when you're a chef. You either look for, when they take their first bite, they do a deep breath, they go, or they do, they'll actually say a curse word that is so good, or that they will actually do the little shoulder shimmy that they don't realize that they do. When they take a first bite, they do this.
Yeah.
They do that. So that's what you look for. It's artistic. The thing about being artistic in food, it's like you can still do stuff that nobody's done before.
Yeah.
And there are just so many brilliant chefs out there. Like there's this, I forgot his name. He's up in Chicago, and he has this restaurant, and he is one of those Michelin star restaurants to where one of his desserts is actually a balloon made of sugar.
Oh, wow.
And you actually inhale the air, so that he just stimulates all your senses, because at one point he lost his sense of smell.
Oh.
And so like stuff like that, like really the really artistic stuff. So it lends itself for you to be artistic.
Yeah.
I recently did I recently did a party where I made 3 different types of bread. I made a sweet bread. I made a baguette, and then I made like a Tuscan type bread. But I made different types of butters. And one of the things about it, I got a jar and I filled it with duck fat with thyme and garlic, and then I made that into a candle.
Oh.
So when you lit the candle, you took your bread and you actually dipped it inside of the candle.
Oh,
so it just allows. I've seen that somewhere before. I'm not going to take that's not 100% my idea, but the creativity is why I got into it, and I love it. And it's such tender is the right word I'm looking for. Mm-hmm. There are certain ingredients that you cook with that they need to be taken care of. If you don't take care of, they'll turn on you just like that. Yeah. Which eggs being one of the most delicate things that you can cook with. If you ever see a chef hat, that's called a torque blanchet. Okay. And they have different folds. They have exactly 100 folds in their hat. Oh. And that's an old French thing. And the tradition is the person wearing that hat, which is the executive chef, wears one that's 18 inches tall, has 100 folds. Each fold represents the different ways that they can cook an egg.
Wow, that I did not know. Thank you for that tidbit of information.
Yep, so that's the one with the really tall hat. That's the executive chef. And, again, the reason why that is because they're so delicate and so hard to work with.
Yeah, that's amazing. I didn't even know there was that many ways to cook an egg.
Well, now it's like the 100 different recipes that you know.
Okay.
But the old tradition is like 100 ways you can cook an egg.
Wow, that's amazing. Do you ever find yourself on like in shorts or TikToks or anything like that where you're watching the artists create like all the different, especially the confectionery art that they do?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's this one baker. I'm not really good with names. He's a young guy, dark hair, but he does this. He's a chocolatier, and he just creates he'll build a dragon the size of this room.
I think we're thinking of the same person. I can't think of his name either.
Yeah. And that amount of talent.
It's crazy.
And just the amount of time that he put practicing that. Because what makes a good chef is doing stuff over and over and over again till you get to the point to where you can educate other people, which I think chefs are educators. Yeah. And that's when you become a chef, is when you have the ability to take what you know and then teach it to somebody else. Yeah. Yeah. But that dude is he did a dumbbell set for The Rock, and it was insane.
It's
they
crazy.
They put the two 45-pound plates next to each other, and you couldn't even tell. The guy is nuts.
I'm watching this time lapse, and you're seeing all the work that's going into it, and you're only getting a glimpse of all the work that actually goes into it. And then at the end, he'll crack it and take a bite and be like, yum. And I'm like, no,
don't touch it.
Don't do it. Well, we're almost out of time already, Patrick. See, that podcast was easy, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, it was.
So is there anything else that you were thinking maybe you wanted to talk about that I didn't touch on yet today?
Well, I'm an educator. A big part of my life is I try to let the students know that I'm a human being. I think that's very, very important. And also to share the knowledge that they have. And so one of my favorite Greek proverbs is the importance of making society better than you. You have to make society better when you leave. Yeah. So the importance of my students knowing that when the knowledge that they have to share it with somebody else. Yeah. So the proverb goes, it's society grows great when old men plant trees in whose shade they will not sit. And so that's what I try to educate my students about, and just making leave this world a better place.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed our conversation and getting to know a little bit more about you.
Well, thank you very, very much.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us here on the Locala podcast. Once again, I'm Lisa Anderson. We've been talking with Patrick Stanley, and you can find his story in our August issue, and we'll put a link in the description, and we'll also go ahead and try to link to the Culinary program for you at Forest High School, so you can take a look at that if you have any students that are interested. And I think they might start doing some catering pretty soon too. So we'll go ahead and link to all of that in the description. Thank you again for joining us here, where we focus on connections through stories.